I am Douglas Little, founder, perfumer, and creative director for Heretic Perfume. You are listening to the I Am Heretic podcast. These podcasts are an exploration of the senses with a focus on fragrance, how it's made, the effects it has, and the incredible people it has led me to meet. Today I'm being joined by the incredible Dr. Will Cole. Will and I met when we were doing an event at Goop, and we started talking, and immediately we had this kind of great love of like two incredible plant nerds came together, and there were sparks that flew off of us. And then I started to realize that he is just incredible and such a genius. And Will, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for those kind words. I feel the same way. I think it's really cool that, this time in our lives we could come together and we're doing awesome things. And I love this, that you have a podcast now. This is super exciting.
It is. And I'm enjoying it so much. I'm hoping that people out there are enjoying it. But the part about the reason that I really wanted to do the podcast was because of people like yourself that I've met and share what you do. So will you please tell us what you are a doctor of?
My doctorate is from Southern California University of Health Sciences, which is integrative medicine school where there's DCs and NDs and MDs and DOs and acupuncturists and oriental medicine doctors all kind of there. And my postdoctorate education and training is in functional medicine and clinical nutrition. So my day job is I consult patients around the world via my virtual functional medicine practice, primarily via webcam. We consult people, giving them a functional medicine perspective on their health and getting to the root cause from an evidence-based standpoint. So we run labs, we drop ship the labs to them or coordinate a local lab in their local town. And then we are guiding them and coaching them and clinically monitoring them, giving them the support that they need. Because we deal with people with really heavy health problems many times, people with autoimmune issues, digestive problems, neurological issues, and hormonal problems, chronic fatigue. So a lot of really serious stuff that it's is not for the faint of heart. But my passion and my joy is really to bring light into the dark spaces of people's lives, to give them hope and a direction out of it.
You said something that really, I think, is a buzzword, and I'd love to hear you define that, is functional medicine. What does that mean to you?
So functional medicine, it's what I'm trained in. It's really the best of both conventional and alternative medicine. And our job is to interpret labs, looking at it from a nuanced perspective. Because anybody's labs, when they get their basic labs from their PCP, GP, endocrinologist, whatever doctor they're going to, their lab is being compared to this reference range. Well, we get that reference range on a lab from a statistical bell curve average of people who go to labs. And people that go to labs aren't the healthiest bunch of people. So there's a lot of people that are going to their doctor and like, heck, I don't feel well. I know something intuitively isn't right with my health. And their doctor says, everything's fine. Your labs are quote unquote normal. And you're just depressed. Here's an antidepressant. Here, you're just getting older. You're just a new mom, or all these sort of well-intentioned reasons at why somebody could be having symptoms despite normal labs. But what they're unintentionally telling people is that they're a lot like the other people with health problems that they're being compared to in that reference range. So in functional medicine, we're looking at a much thinner range within that larger reference range of where vibrant wellness is, which is a tighter range within that reference range on that Quest or LabCorp or whatever lab you're looking at. And then we run more comprehensive labs too. So we're looking at things like microbiome issues, like gut problems or hormonal imbalances or toxicity issues or chronic infections. We're looking at the underlying pieces to the puzzle of why somebody feels the way that they do. And then we realize we're all different. It's bioindividuality. It's what works for one person, even if it's healthy, may not be the best thing for the next person. So we really believe and are aware in functional medicine that we are all unique, and we have to really be open-minded to what does your wellness journey look like. So that's in a nutshell what functional medicine is to me.
One of the things that you said that was this buzzword that stuck in my head, and I love it so much, is that every time that someone sits down to eat a meal, that it is their opportunity to heal themselves.
That's what it is. Yeah. There's always going to be a dance between the foods that we eat and our biochemistry, and it's the ripple effect of that. And that goes back to bioindividuality as well, as every food we eat is going to interplay with our biochemistry different from person to person. And it's that confluence of genetics and epigenetics and bioindividuality and our microbiome and our way that our body processes and detoxes and metabolizes certain things is so different from person to person. So that goes back to really the heart of what I do, is really to find out what your body loves and what your body hates, and really to find that food piece, because food is a powerful medicine. But if you're focusing on foods that don't make you feel well, or that are not instructing healthy pathways in the body, you're going to feel miserable.
Let's say that I'm going to be a new patient of yours. How does the consult go, and then how do you work with the patient?
It really, in my mind, starts with a really good, solid, thorough health history. So that's where it starts. We're online via webcam normally. I'm based out of Pittsburgh, but most of the time it's online. And then we drop ship the appropriate labs, and the labs that we're sending out to them is based on that comprehensive health history. It's finding out, okay, what labs would give us the most relevant information? What's the most pertinent for that person to give them the answers they're looking for? We put all that stuff together and we come up with a food protocol, a natural medicine protocol, and then we clinically monitor them and coach them and educate them throughout. I mean, most of our patients are with us initially, let's just say a better part of the year, really digging deep, working on these things. These are not quick fix problems, but they're things that we take very seriously to get them to the place of wellness, whatever that looks like for the individual. So that's, in a nutshell, what the process looks like.
Fascinating. Now, you also have written a book called Ketotarian, and the book, I just think that the book is incredible. I love the way that it's written, the way that you approach talking about what you do and the idea of the whole keto principle. The knowledge feels ancient and it feels modern all at the same time, which I think is part of the reason why it resonates with me so much. Can you tell listeners about what the keto principle is?
Ketotarian, again, it's going back to that alchemy between the best of being plant-based and the best of being ketogenic or fat adapted or keto adapted, hence the name Ketotarian. And what we're talking about when we're talking about ketosis or nutritional ketosis, it's a metabolic state of becoming a fat burner, because we have, as humans, two different main forms of fuel. We can burn sugar for fuel or burn fat for fuel. You can put kindling on the fire, it'll create a flame and fuel, but it's going to be short-lived. So you have to keep putting more kindling on the fire, or you're going to get hangry and irritable and be on a blood sugar roller coaster throughout your day. And the goal and the way that I advocated for it in Ketotarian isn't to always be in ketosis, not always become a fat burner, but you can put kindling on the fire when you want to. You can have some healthy, clean, sugars or like fruits and starches and things like that. But you have to build metabolic flexibility. And most people are only and always in sugar burning mode. And what I'm advocating for in Ketotarian is to give your body that metabolic flexibility, which is, like you said, it's an ancient thing. It's our very birthright as human beings, because for the majority of human history, we would have had that metabolic flexibility. We are all born burning ketones as babies. But then throughout the majority of human history, we would have had times of burning kindling and burning fat for fuel. We would have had the flexibility to do both. But now, because of modernity and all its, the negative aspects of it, with tons of refined carbohydrates and just poor diet overall, we've lost that birthright, that ancient birthright. So that's what I'm advocating for in Ketotarian. But let's leverage the benefits of that ketogenic diet, but do it in a clean, sustainable way. So that's what Ketotarian is.
You are a huge avocado advocate, which avocados are one of my personally favorite things. Can you shed a little light on the bad fats, good fats concept?
Healthy fats is really the foundation of a Ketotarian, a mostly plant-based keto meal plan. So it's a high-fat, moderate protein, low carbohydrate diet, which is what the conventional ketogenic diet is as well. But with the Ketotarian plate, we're filling it up with just clean, predominantly plant fats. So there's a vegan keto. Majority of the recipes that would be considered vegan keto. Then there's a good section of vegetarian keto options. And then there's a pescatarian keto option, which is what I call vegetarian in the book. It's predominantly plant-based, but if you need a play on words, I am your guy. Anyway, so the healthy fats that people should be focusing on that are all ketotarian, all the vegan keto fats would be avocado that you mentioned, olives, avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil, nuts and seeds, and I recommend them predominantly to be soaked so they're more digestible to the body, and coconut. So coconut cream, coconut oil, coconut milk, almond milk, cashew milk, all those things. So that's going to be all the vegan keto options. And then the vegetarian keto options, we would add in pasture raised eggs, organic eggs, and ghee or clarified butter. That's vegetarian keto. And then the pescatarian keto options would add in then the wild caught fish, the fresh seafood. And then obviously they would have the vegetarian and the vegan options, and the vegetarian keto would have the vegetarian and the vegan options. And then the vegan would just have the vegan option. So I wanted to give flexibility there. But again, it's all clean, sustainable, whole food based ketogenic diet. So the bad fats would be processed, like partially hydrogenated fats, rancid vegetable oils, industrial seed oils. Those are pro-inflammatory. Conventionally raised, like farm raised meat would be bad as well. So it's not the fat that's the problem. It's really what we've done to nature, as you know very well. That's the problem. So it's this mismatch between genetics and epigenetics that's the issue. Research estimates that our genetics haven't changed in 10,000 years. But yeah, our world has changed very dramatically in a very short period of time. So it's this growing mismatch between our DNA and the world around us that's the problem. So healthy fats aren't to be feared, but we should be getting them from whole, sustainable, from the earth, unchanged, rich with these polyphenols and fat-soluble vitamins. And our brain is 60% fat, 25% of all our cholesterol is in our brain. Our hormone needs these fats. Our immune system needs these fats. Our skin needs these fats. So this is something that is so paramount for human biochemistry, but yet a lot of money and a lot of bad science and a lot of antiquated information has led many people to fear fat, and then they focus on all these unhealthy fats. So it's all upside down, but hopefully things are changing. I think things are changing because people are waking up to the fact that, look, we're doing all this stuff, but it's not helping us, and we need to do something different to see something different. And now research is really, confirming what we in functional medicine have been saying for a long time.
In speaking to the idea about vegetarianism, being vegan, meat alternatives, and being very proactive in a plant-based diet, what's your thoughts about? I mean, I just have such concern over these kind of vegetarian meats and like the ultimate wonder burger that's all plant-based. And as happy as I am to see these alternatives coming up, I'm also, the processing of these plants sometimes for me feels like they're almost more toxic than just eating a traditional burger.
Going and having like one of those plant-based burgers that are popular right now may be better than like the McDonald's, but is it really optimal? Just because it's plant-based doesn't necessarily mean it's the most healthiest. And you get all these processed, tons of bad oils, like canola oil, all there packaged with tons of fillers and binders. And is it better, or is the grass-fed beef burger better? And if you look at it from a health standpoint, I would say the grass-fed burger is going to be better. But if you also look at it from an environmental standpoint, the amount of greenhouse gases and emissions and just the amount of the footprint of all the industrial farming that has to go into to make that processed plant-based burger is going to be a lot more than the local sustainable farmer that's practicing restorative farming. And I think the people need to get beyond that sort of polarized, it's one or the other, because it's a lot more nuanced than that. And I encourage anybody to really look into regenerative farming and local farming and what those practices are doing from an environmental standpoint. And the research is quite compelling. So yeah, I would agree with you completely about that.
Again, we could have a whole podcast about regenerative farming. I'm obsessed with it. I'm telling you, I'm 2 seconds from throwing it all up in the air and making a farm. It's like all I'm obsessed with these days. You had brought up something else earlier that I thought was very paramount and really interesting, and it's about about blood sugars. And it's something that I don't think that enough people are aware of. I think that if you're in the health and wellness community, you are aware of it. But I think that people discount the concept of blood sugars and how we spike our blood sugar, constantly, and that it is kind of stroking this pleasure area of the brain. And we become, really dependent on bits of kindling, as you said, which I think is such a great analogy. Can you give listeners any ideas as to signs that their blood sugar may be out of whack and what they may be reaching for?
Yeah, so some signs that your blood sugar is out of balance, that you want to create blood sugar stability, would be if you are irritable, if you miss a meal, if you feel like you have low blood sugar, if you get hangry, which is hungry and angry is evil spawn, and if you get shaky, if you feel really fatigued after you have a meal, trouble losing weight, like weight loss resistance, if you have trouble sleeping, those are all things that your blood sugar may be off. Objectively, you could run some labs, and these are labs that we run for patients, but you don't need a functional medicine doctor for these basic labs. So things like your glucose. In functional medicine, the optimal range is under 90 for a fasting blood sugar, glucose. Triglycerides, we want it under 100, and that's going to be different than the lab's reference range, but the optimal range would be under 100, and that's circulating fat or triglycerides. And HDL, we want that to be above 60. The American Diabetic Association, other mainstream governing bodies would look at the HDL triglyceride ratio. And when you see low HDL, high triglycerides, that may be indicative of insulin resistance, which is the blood sugar problem that most people have. And then you can look at your A1C, which is the 3-month average of your blood sugar. We want that in functional medicine, your A1C to be under 5.5. And so those are some basic tests that you can run to get a snapshot and a baseline to see where your blood sugars may be.
When you're working with clients, do you rule out sweeteners completely, or are there sweeteners that are safe?
We all have different tolerances to different sweeteners, and some people can handle more. Some people are more insulin sensitive. Some people are more insulin resistant. Some people can have more like natural whole food based sweeteners and be fine. So in Ketotarian, I recommend things like stevia or stevia, which is a plant. It's a sweetener derived from a plant. Monk fruit, same thing. These are low carb, natural sweeteners. Xylitol, resveratrol, like these sugar alcohols can be fine as well. There's like brands out there like Swerve, which are blends of these different sugar alcohols and natural sweeteners that people can use. So those are some Ketotarian low carb sweeteners that are natural. And then, in the inflammation spectrum, which is my second book, we open up a little bit more because it's not just about ketosis. So if people want to eat a little bit more of a moderate carb diet from healthy carbs, they can bring in things like honey, raw honey, maple syrup, pure maple syrup. That wouldn't be necessarily Ketotarian, but they can do maybe a cyclical Ketotarian approach, or not be in ketosis at all, but just eat clean. So those are some other sweeteners. But again, it's back to bio-individuality. Some people have to look at and moderate those carbohydrates. Some people can tolerate more of them and be fine. So there's definitely not a one size fits all, but it's a matter of like looking at your body, what's impacting you, and how do you feel when you have these different sweeteners.
And what is the one sweetener that you would absolutely avoid?
The sucralose should be avoided. I think the high fructose corn syrup, hopefully everybody under the sun knows that's not good for you. And I think those would be the top ones. I think the aspartame, those aren't good either, like the Equal and those artificial sweeteners. So those to me would be the least helpful. They'd be the most problematic, would be the high fructose corn syrup, aspartame, and sucralose.
And in your book, you have this term. I know I'm going to butcher it, so you're going to have to correct me. It's so interesting, and I think that it gave me so much desire to want to jump in with both feet to being Ketotarian and doing a program with you. Is the term, is it autophagy?
Autophagy.
Autophagy.
It's self-eating. So it's what it is. It's your healthy cells gobbling up the dysfunctional cells. So there's so much exciting research centered around autophagy, and the Ketotarian diet, a plant-based ketogenic diet, is a fasting mimicking diet. So it elicits a lot of the benefits of fasting without fasting, because you can eat into your full, eat nutrient dense healing foods, but still elicit a lot of the same benefits of fasting, which is one of them is autophagy. And it's kind of good from an anti-aging standpoint, kind of making resilient, youthful skin. It's good from a brain recycling and making your brain youthful and the brain cleaning up any dead dysfunctional cells there. And yeah, so I love that. I get so fascinated about the research around that. And the one way that we do that with the ketotarian diet is because it's moderating protein. It's modulating something called mTOR, which is a specific pathway that has to do with basically accelerated cell division. And we are able to modulate that because you're not having excess protein. And we are able to sort of stimulate our body's anti-aging autophagy pathways. And the fact that we are limiting carbohydrates as well. We are not increasing carbs. So we're getting the healthy fats are really a way to really promote this autophagy pathway in a powerful way.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, I am so fascinated with this concept of autophagy. It really is. I think there's so much future in it. And I think that, really getting the body to kind of be in this place where it's healing itself, it's kicking out the things that it doesn't need and giving it the fuel to be able to do that. Not only the physical fuel, but I think also the mental fuel. And that's the other thing that I think plays such an important role in your work is your full commitment to kind of mind, body, spirit. I know that spirit is not something that you go too deep into, but it's definitely part and parcel of your work, which I think is really the future of medicine.
Oh my goodness. Yes. It's so much so. And people need to look at that. I mean, I do explore that a little bit in Ketotarian and the inflammation spectrum because it's so important, because you could have all this cool health science information at your fingertips and you can tap into the latest research in clinical nutrition and functional medicine. But ultimately, if you don't have your head and your heart right, and what's your relationship with your body, what's your relationship with your food that you eat, all of that stuff, to me, is the centeredness or the ethos of why you're even doing what you're doing is the genesis of sustainable wellness. So I agree with you. It has to be the future of healthcare, because if we just got the outside right, then it's going to be unsustainable. You have to work from the inside out, because the good healthy foods or the healthy movement or picking conscious brands like Heretic, like all of that to me is a ripple effect of realizing the valuable creation that you are.
When you've got a client who's coming to you, and I'm sure you get quite a few people that are saying, okay, I'm going to embrace your work because I'm looking to clean up my life, or I'm having some health issues. What are some of the things that you would tell them beyond diet that would be a recommendation on what you would have them do?
A lot of what we do clinically is working on the non-food things. And I really explore this in the inflammation spectrum, which is the follow-up to Ketotarian, because it's not just about food. And you have to look at stress, you have to look at toxins, you have to look at social isolation, you have to look at screen time and past traumas and social media addiction, all this stuff that is also influencing our biochemistry. It's influencing inflammation, it's influencing our hormones, it's influencing our neurotransmitters. It is impacting every cell of our body. So it is not just about food. So we're looking at these non-food things that I wrote about in the inflammation spectrum, but I wrote about it because these are the things that I coach patients on, myself and my team. So we're really looking at all the different components that make somebody feel the way that they do, because it's the bidirectional relationship between our body and thoughts and emotions, because our physiology impacts thoughts and emotions, but then our thoughts and emotions also impacts physiology, meaning that if our hormones are out of balance or if our inflammation levels are high, that's going to impact our mood and how we feel and think about the world. But then that same vicious cycle can happen when you have negative thoughts, or you're constantly, scrolling through FOMO-inducing social media content, or you're in a toxic relationship, or you hate your job. That's going to influence inflammation and cortisol levels and suppress the immune system as well. So those are all things that we need to talk about. So we get really nitty-gritty clinically and look at all these, again, measurable, but then indirectly measurable, like things like chronic viral infections like Epstein-Barr virus and cytomegalovirus and human herpes 6 virus and chronic Lyme and co-infections and mold. That's something that we see oftentimes too. So it's so much more complex than just food, but food is definitely a commonality between what people need to do, because again, going back to every food we eat either feeds inflammation or fights it, it is definitely a component for everybody.
And how much do you think that fragrance plays a part in a person's toxicity in their environment?
No, it's so major. It's so major because people, first of all, it's so underlooked at. Like most of our patients, by the time they get to us, they're already eating cleaner than most Americans. They're very well read. They know more or less like about a lot of stuff. But yet I find that there's this remnant section of their life, and oftentimes it's centered around beauty. And they still using products on their skin. They're still spraying things all around them, still using products in their shower or, even in the kitchen. But largely beauty products are one of those things where they just do not think that they need to swap out, or they haven't gone there intellectually to make that swap. But the reality is our skin is our largest organ, and what we put on it largely is being absorbed. And when you look at these unregulated, untested chemicals that people are putting on their skin, it's really remarkable. We have to look at this as being at least a component for our wellness. And it's something that I definitely very early on in patient care have to be educating people to make that conversion.
Yeah, and I'm so appreciative of it. And I think that, again, people they don't have the knowledge of, really understanding what goes into it and understanding that there's so many hidden ingredients that can be lurking in fragrance. I think, one of the things I always want to point out is that just because, obviously, I'm a founder of an all natural fragrance collection, and, I love working with natural fragrances. A lot of times people will crucify me by saying, well, you are stating that naturals are much better than synthetics. And I'm not saying that. I need to be clear about that. I'm just, because a lot of people need to understand that there are allergies to naturals. And so you can put a natural fragrance on and still have a reaction to it. I think the difference is really about this transparency that I really want to pioneer, is that I firmly believe that what people should have the right to is understanding what it is they're putting on their body is made from. And so we just try to be as clear about that as possible and really state that we're really about giving people the opportunity and, the alternative to know exactly what, they're not only they're putting in their body, but they're putting on their body, which I think really, supports what you're saying as well.
Yeah, it's important definitely to be accurate and not to overstate things, which you never do. The reality is, from a functional medicine standpoint, yes, transparency is super important without a doubt, and there's a lack of that in the conventional beauty world. But what also is fascinating to me is the functional components to natural scents like Heretic, because research is really catching up with antiquity. The different components to that, things that have been used traditionally for thousands of years, they knew anecdotally that they would be helpful for certain things. Even just breathing them and smelling them would be beneficial. But now research is looking at the different pathways that these things can be beneficial, and not just smelling them, but actually transdermally as well. The benefits that they can have for people. When the research that's coming out of South Korea and Japan on forest bathing and the mechanisms at that, meaning that they're actually, doctors in Japan are actually prescribing getting out into the forest for their patients when it comes to different health problems, because of the benefits of being out in nature and breathing in fresh air. But it's also specifically, they're finding out these compounds in the forest, these essential oils and scents and smells in the forest actually have a therapeutic benefit. So we're just scratching the surface of what these things can do. But that's what I love, because you're taking beauty, but you're actually making it functional for overall wellness, which I love that.
Oh, thank you very much. When applying fragrance to the skin, you really want the skin to be as close to neutral as possible to get the fragrance to just have a really great odor profile. I would say the majority of times people's skin, very much fluctuates, but we do know that it fluctuates a tremendous amount on what they're putting inside their body. So do you, as far as like a Ketotarian diet, do you have any knowledge of the skin mantle being in an acid state or being in an unbalanced state, and what what type of foods would potentially influence the skin to move into more of those different states?
Well, I mean, the foods that we eat influence our skin microbiome tremendously. So our gut microbiome, it's all the trillions of bacteria in our gut, also influences the skin through the gut-skin axis. But our skin also has its own microbiome or protective layer of bacteria. So it's important to use products that aren't going to disrupt your skin's microbiome, and also to eat foods that influence a healthy gut-skin axis microbiome connection and overall connection between the gut-skin axis. So I believe that a healthy Ketotarian diet is one of the best diets for your gut-skin axis, because you're avoiding foods that increase intestinal permeability or leaky gut syndrome, which one of the top foods for that is going to be sugar, and is going to be grains, wheat, rye, oat, barley, spelt, even rice, corn, quinoa. These things can increase intestinal permeability, which impacts that cascade of inflammation, the gut-skin axis, and a lot of skin problems and shifts in the skin's pH are associated with intestinal permeability. So eliminating these things that research shows to be drivers of a disruption of that skin, healthy skin barrier is important. And dairy is the other one too. A Ketotarian is dairy free as well. These are all things that I would advocate anybody that wants a healthy skin barrier, healthy skin moisturization, because healthy fats are quite lubricating to the skin as well.
Whenever I sit down to do a session with someone, or I'm even just at the counter and just talking about fragrance people, it seems like 9 times out of 10, a person will ask, does my diet affect the way that a fragrance is going to smell on my skin? And, I always talk about, either the skin being acid or alkaline, and about trying to find as neutral a place as possible. But again, if you eat a tremendous amount of garlic and onions, of course, these are going to influence the skin to a certain degree, but it's interesting to hear it from your perspective. Do you have a favorite Heretic fragrance?
Oh, I love Dirty Rose, probably the best.
And I always ask all of my guests on the podcast to tell me one of their either most profound or most erotic fragrance memories. Can you share that with us?
I would say, to me, it's like summertime in the Northeast, like freshly cut grass, like just being out in nature, but smelling grass of like a far off like farmer cutting this field. I think that to me reminds me of all the good things of growing up in rural Western Pennsylvania and countryside. I love that smell.
That's a good one. It's a good one. And I'm going to today package you up a bottle of Dirty Grass and get you it, because hopefully it will elicit some of those wonderful memories.
Oh, thank you.
Dr. Cole, thank you very much for joining us today. This was an incredible conversation, as I knew it would be, and I really appreciate your time so much. For anyone who is interested in learning more about Dr. Will Cole and his work, you can find him and his book available at drwillcole.com. He also has probably one of the most fun and engaging Instagram accounts that I love following you. It's super fun. Do you have anything else coming up, or a new book that's out?
I do. The Inflammation Spectrum came out not too long ago. So it's the follow-up to Ketotarian. And the whole message of it is to find out what your body loves and hates. And we talk about food and non-food things that we can do to calm inflammation in the body. And, Goop Fellas comes out every Wednesday. It's Goop's first spin-off podcast that I have with Seamus Mullen. And a lot of good things, but my main focus is patients. So every weekday I'm immersed in cases. So we have an online group class that we launched recently. If people don't want the one-on-one consultation, some people just want a lower entry point. It enables us to make it more accessible or more affordable for people. So I'm really excited about the online group class, as well as the one-on-one consults that we're still doing.
That's really exciting. And for listeners, if you're enjoying this podcast, please rate us at Spotify or iTunes, and I will look forward to speaking with you next week.